Well, we've gotten a taste of cold, and it's time to start thinking about our ponds. So I'm out here with Eamon. We're out at Hughes Water Gardens. And Eamon, what do we need to be doing in our ponds this time of year?
Well, one of the first things is to get rid of any of the dying foliage and stuff in your pond, because you don't want that to rot into the water. That'll create a big algae problem for you next year.
Okay.
So I'll show a few things quickly. If you have a water lily, there might still be some green leaves on it. You could leave those on. But anything that's yellowing, you can take off. And just a scissors will work. You don't need a pruning shears for lilies.
Okay.
You basically just trim it back. I'm going to trim this totally back so you can see where you're to be. So if you imagine all of that rotting back into your pond again, will cause a mighty mess for you next year.
And that's probably going to clog filters and things like that too, if
Yeah.
it just sits there and starts clogging.
So all I'm leaving on this, there's one tiny leaf here, and then there's some growing tips coming up here.
Okay.
And they will just come up again next spring for you.
And so you'll just leave that in the water like that?
Just leave it in the water. People often worry, are these hardy enough with the ice? As long as this crown doesn't freeze, you're fine.
Okay.
So in our area here, 6 inches underneath, but if you can drop it down a foot, 18 inches, it'll be fine.
Okay.
And then bring it back up again for the spring.
Okay. And then some of the other ones that have some
of the
foliage down
marginals, again, this got hit by frost just the last couple of nights. And again, you can just trim off all of that easily.
And so it looks like you don't have to be too delicate with them.
You don't.
It's
you just give it a chance. There's your growing tip coming for next year, and that will be fine. Plants like irises can get quite a bit messy. I'm just trying to show you one part of this. It would take us all day. See that growing center there?
Yep.
These often pull off, but if they don't, you can trim them. So what we're trying to do is just leave that nice fresh centerpiece for next year, just there.
So then once we have our plants all kind of taken care of, what else do we need to be looking for as far as like the water or the rest of the pond?
Well, if you have fish in the pond, something you've got to be really careful of is the feeding at this time of year. If you give koi or regular goldfish high protein food, summer food, too late in the year when the temperature is cold, it rots their belly out and it actually drops the belly out of them. So you have to transition to a spring and fall diet, which is more a wheat germ diet.
Okay.
So you do that until the temperature drops to around 50 degrees, and then let them go into dormancy for the winter.
Right, you don't want to beef them up and have them active since they're going to
And there are many little thermometers, very reasonable, that'll show you what your water temperature is. It's really important to keep track of your water temperature for the feeding. And then one other little thing here I want to show you. This is a little net. It's a strawberry netting. And if you're in a high leaf area under trees and stuff, just if the pond is small enough, put this over the pond, and then you just peel it back. And
that makes for a lot easier cleanup than trying to scoop all that stuff out all the time. Then you just pull that off, get the leaf.
So that's your fish and plants taken care of.
And then for the water itself, if it's worry about freezing and ice. If it gets that cold, do we need to worry about that, or is it going to depend on the pond?
In our area, we don't have to worry too much about it. We do occasionally get a deep freeze for a week or 10 days.
Okay.
And in that case, you've got to make sure there's enough oxygen transfer happening at the water surface. And there are some pond heaters that you can just float in there if you're going to get into that. This just floats there, and it keeps an area of the ice open for the oxygen to get down in there. And if you have a waterfall in one of those deep freezes, you do have to be careful. Let it run, and you'll get these wonderful ice sculptures on it all winter. It's great. But in order to form those, you're dropping water under the ice in the pond, and you can actually run your pump dry. So be aware of that if you're creating your ice sculptures,
Right, make sure your water levels
for the winter, so the water level is good. And then one final thing on the water. If you're doing bacteria, we love, in most of our systems, we use a bacteria. And what this particular one now they developed is for autumn and winter. So the beneficial bacteria in this will break down any sort of sludge or that's on the bottom of the pond, fish poop, dead leaves, all of that. So it's good to put some of this in for the winter. And then in spring, you put in a more activated one that really acts for the summer.
Cleans it up more.
So the bacteria really. And if you take those simple, items there and do that for your pond, everything will be ready for you next spring, just to go on and enjoy it for next year.
Well, Eamon, we always appreciate the tips, these things that we can take home and do ourselves as more people are putting in ponds. So It's been a pleasure to be out here. For more information, you can go to your website or you can go to gardentime.tv and we'll click you open. So, Eamon, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Ryan.